Hi, and welcome to the Inner Work Mastery channel. My name is Fazila Bijo, and I am a self-mastery and consciousness mentor, metaphysical teacher, and an intuitive healer and channel. In this week's episode on the Inner Work Mastery channel, I focus on bringing through teachings from the likes of great mystics and minds like Joseph Murphy, Florence Scovel Shinn, Neville Goddard, and many more that I will be introducing. In this week's episode, I will be covering revision for manifesting an SP. Sometimes see comments telling me that they really want me to get to the point, and honestly, if I could download all of these teachings in 2 minutes, I'd be happy to. As much as I would love to just give you the 2-minute download, you're going to be missing out, because in 2 minutes, all I would say to you is go rewrite the past. And in terms of SP, it is a complex and multi-layered issue, not simply a case of manifesting your partner. We'll be covering a couple of do's and don'ts in this video, because if you don't know what you're doing in terms of revising, if you don't know how to apply the law, you're going to be struggling and frustrated. And that's often what happens when clients come to me. Oh, you're not going to achieve much if all you're doing is consuming the stuff like fast food. This is no McDonald's drive-through. So I put in the time and the commitment so that I can make these teachings easier for people to get to and work with and actually integrate. And that's the whole point of these videos. For me, it really is, what would I have loved to have seen when I was starting to apply the law of assumption and the other teachings. For now, I am still going through case studies, and the reason I'm using these case studies is there are many people who've applied the law of assumption successfully, and they wrote in terms of their success, or they talk about the methods that they've used. Now, what I do in these case studies is I pull out the pertinent things. Think of this like an Easter egg hunt. You want to find the nuggets, or you want to find those little Easter eggs that are hidden in Neville's work. And when I point these out, I suggest you make some notes. So each week, in terms of the videos I produce, you're going to receive a different aspect, you're going to receive a different perspective in terms of the teachings. So even if you think this is just about revision, when you go through the different cases, when you listen to how people have applied the different methods, etc., it all starts to come together in a synergistic way. If you are to do this on your own, it is going to require that you read and absorb the entire spectrum of teachings. And if there are, and from what I've gathered with many of my subscribers on this channel, you guys are actually putting in the work to go through these teachings on my channel so that you can actually grasp them. And for those who subscribe to my channel, I know that you're finding these teachings valuable. They come through from what I study and what I know will make a difference in terms of your understanding and your application. So this week's question is, what do you do when you're presented with a problem? Think back to one or two problems that you may have encountered recently. Did you revise, or did you actually leave it as it was presented? Mrs. J.E. documented her particular case in terms of using revision to manifest her SP. Now, there are certain things that the manifesting community actually have a very strong opinion around in terms of SP. I will be talking about some of those. Agree or disagree with me, it won't matter, because the thing is, you will be creating the results based on the thinking and the beliefs that you have. Unless, of course, you want to change them and be more effective. And also, in the long run, create that which is going to elevate you in terms of your consciousness and elevate your life. This week's video, Neville talks about living creatively. I've talked about imaginative occupancy in one of my previous videos. In this week, we're going to look at how to live creatively. Now, living creatively means to create your reality using the power of your imagination. It's more than just the power of imagination. This is the creative power of your subconscious energy, your consciousness, which is accessed via the imaginal gateway. Now, that imaginal gateway, you will know from other videos that it is when you access it through the state akin to sleep or SATS, or through prayer. Now, both of these are gateways into the subconscious. And what we are doing is actually changing our subconscious energy, our state of consciousness, so that we may bring that consciousness into our physical life. So using this creative power is going to enable us to solve what we think are complex problems in a very creative way, in a new way, in an innovative way, because what we are doing is planting the seed into the subconscious, and we allow that state of consciousness to develop within. And as that state of consciousness develops within and it produces the effect that is on the outside, when we stay true to the wish fulfilled or our desire. Now, using this power in a creative way is better than having to deny or limit that which we desire. And this is the thing that Neville says is all desires can be imagined into existence. Now, very quickly, if you're not aware of this, when you go into the state akin to sleep, when you access that drowsy state just before you fall asleep, you're actually in the theta brainwave. Now you see here, it is about reduced consciousness. It's about the thinking mind. It is about where we are, where we do, and where we are in the logical mind, etc. This is the state we achieve through deep meditation. It's when we are dreaming. It's light sleep. When you go to sleep, you're going to be dreaming. And what do we dream of? It's what we actually carry into our sleep. And this is what revision does. It is the first act of cure or correction. So depending on the day, if you've had a day that wasn't great and you revise it, you take that new revised state into the state akin to sleep, into SATS. And that's where you can program the memory of what you had experienced that day into something that is a higher ideal. And you are to revise your day before you fall asleep. So some people complain about the fact that they don't get to revise their whole day, etc. So revise on the spot. However, if you're just starting out with revision, my suggestion is you start with one thing in your day that you're revising before you go to sleep. It means that you've got to set that time aside for yourself. Keep the appointment with yourself. Honor yourself. Do that for 7 days. The next 7 days, once you've practiced revising one thing in your day, then you maybe increase it to 3 things from your day. And for the next 7 days, you practice revision. You revise your day such that you are now taking 3 events from your day that you did not enjoy. So whether it is a meeting, an interaction, maybe you took a test, maybe had a minor mishap, whatever that may be, revise that experience. But you do this before falling asleep. Get into the habit of doing this. The way I see revision, it is like energetic hygiene. You won't skip taking a shower after you've had a heavy workout. Why skip revising your day if you've had things that didn't feel okay? If you had an emotional experience, or you've had something that happened which was making you sad, or it was pointing towards failure, etc. Do not let it proceed forward into your life by taking that state into your sleep. When you revise, you must visualize clearly. So take a short scene, and I have other videos around revision. I'll quickly recap here though. You take a short scene and you must enter into the revised scene. So if you, for example, had a conversation with a colleague in the day that did not go well for you, it didn't go in your favor, enter the scene and you must actively participate in the scene. You're going to hear yourself speaking to your colleague, and you'll hear them say the words that you wanted them to say in this imaginal scene from the first person. So it's not like you're watching a movie, you are in the movie. Think of yourself as an actor in this new scene. And it must be the desired solution of the problem. And here's something to take note. When you revise, it may have an influence on others, but that is not your concern. Always apply the golden rule. And it's a future video I will do. But the principle of the golden rule is do unto others as you would have done unto you. This is the case study, so follow along from the Law and the Promise, chapter 3, in terms of Mrs. J.E. She starts with, last August, while on a blind date, I met the man I wanted to marry. This happens sometimes, and it happened to me. He was everything I had ever thought of as desirable in a husband. So she goes on to say that 2 days after this enchanted evening, it was necessary for her to change her place of residence because of her work. And that in that same week, the mutual friend who introduced her to this man moved away from the city. Now she says, I realized then that the man I met probably did not know of my new address, and frankly, I was not sure he knew my name. She goes on to say, after your last lecture, I spoke to you of this situation. Although I had plenty of other dates, I could not forget this one man. Your lecture was based on revising our day, and after speaking to you, I determined to revise my day every day. Just to highlight this, Mrs. J.E. says that she spoke to Neville, and based on his lecture about revising the day, she was determined to revise her day every day. And she says, before going to sleep that night, I felt I was in a different bed in my own home as a married woman, not as a single working girl sharing an apartment with 3 other girls. So here it is. She has now revised what she's seeing in her external reality, not making that reality the final version. She changes her revised scene to being that of a married woman. And then she says, I twisted an imaginary wedding band on my imaginary left hand, saying over and over to myself, this is wonderful. I really am Mrs. J.E. And she falls asleep in what she says was a moment before a waking dream. The waking dream is when you enter into imagination and you decide what is the desired solution for me in terms of what I see outside of me in my physical reality. Again, I want to highlight, she says, I was in a different bed in my own home as a married woman. So you must invoke that feeling. And even though she doesn't know what it's like to be married, what she can do is bring in the feeling of joy, excitement, even relief. And she also brought in the sensory feeling of twisting that imaginary wedding band on her left hand. And she repeated to herself, isn't it wonderful? Or this is wonderful. I really am Mrs. J.E. She says, I repeated this imaginary scene for 1 month, night after night. So it was the new scene, the one that she was implanting into her subconscious. She's not accepted the lack of what she is focused on in terms of her imaginary scene is her end state, her desired wish fulfilled. The first week in October, he found me. On our second date, I knew my dreams were rightly placed. She tells Neville that you have told us to live in the end of our desire until that desire becomes fact. And even though she didn't know how he felt towards her, she continued night after night living in the feeling of her dream realized. Now, like I said, there are many different thoughts and different camps in terms of manifesting that specific person. I would like to bring the golden rule in here at this point and say that if you can keep true to doing unto others as I would have done unto me, so her results were the following. In October, he found her. In November, he proposed to her. In January, they announced their engagement, and they were married the following May. And she says that the loveliest part of all of this is that she is happier than she has ever dreamed it could be possible. And she knows in her heart that he is too. She is Mrs. Am happy than I ever dreamed possible, and I know in my heart he is too. In terms of applying the principle of the golden rule, Mrs. J.E. saw herself as being happily married and saw herself as Mrs. J.E. And she says that it was confirmed for her that this was the thing that was actually really good, because she found the man of her dreams and it felt good. And she knows that they are both happy. Now, there might be some people who are going to raise the issue of what happens if my SP has had no contact, they don't want to be with me, etc. In terms of Mrs. J.E.'s example, she was in a higher state of her ideals, where she saw herself as a happily married woman. Now, many times when people have issues around manifesting an SP, they are in a situation of lack. And I said I would cover what you can and what you should and shouldn't do. So for her, problem was that she worried about her date getting back in contact with her. And what she could have done was relied on her memory and used past image, a past image which would have only reinforced the lack in her life, which would have been, I don't know how to get into contact with this person. How will they reach me? I've just changed my work address, etc., etc. Instead, what she did was she focused on dreaming it possible, seeing that she was already married, feeling in her mind's eye, in her imaginal scene, she could see that she had the ring on her finger. And when she twisted the ring, that gave her that sensory visual, the feeling of the ring on her finger. So if you are wanting to manifest something where, number one, you may not have an idea of how to do this because you haven't experienced that before, or number two, you are needing to be invoking the particular feeling, etc., start with something that is simple, start with something that is feeling natural as well. In this instance, the ring implies that you are married. It must give you what the end scene would be. It must give you what the end result would be. So Mrs. J.E. used her imagination radically instead of conservatively. And what that means is that she really stepped into the visual scene. She really felt it. She felt this real, and she saw herself. She revised the situation with the new scene day after day until it was a month or over which that she had actually been practicing the imaginal scene, conscious and being deliberate and being aware of it. Because the thing is that imagination created what she desired out of a dream of fancy. And when we use our imagination, we are using our creative power. And here's what Neville says: if our time of revision is well spent, we need not worry about the results, because our fondest hopes will be realized, whether it is starting a relationship or getting married. Hold your faith, hold your vision, keep your feeling aligned to the desired result. Neville says that there is no inevitable permanence in anything, which means that nothing is permanent. You created your life on a level of imagination. You created that because you accepted it and you assumed it to be true. Whatever events and experiences have unfolded for you, you have accepted it and you've consented to it. And the only reason then that it would feel permanent is because you are sustaining it in your imagination. on one level or another, whether it is on the conscious level or on the deeper subconscious. A radical transformation is always possible for us because we can revise the undesirable parts of our life and part of our day. And therefore, revise each day. Do not let your day go past. Do not go into the sleep state without revising your day. And so, again, I will remind you, test the law and prove it for yourself. As I mentioned, SP is quite a big topic and it's also quite a contentious one. So I would like you to firstly get the steps and some of the do's and don'ts in place. Write out the steps so that you can practice it. When you've written it down, it's going to just help you become more familiar, and you can read it out a couple of times over the next couple of days so that you can get into the habit of learning the processes. All of the processes and techniques in terms of the things that you really want to master will require your commitment. It will require your time initially, and it will require that you work with it step by step. If you are to miss any steps, you may find yourself frustrated and believing that the law doesn't work. Believe me, it works. I transformed my relationship with my husband. So it's in the strictest sense, it's not a special person as in a new relationship, but I still brought in a level of change and transformation in terms of the relationship I was having with my husband and what I wanted my marriage to be like. So that was the case study and the steps in terms of manifesting an SP using the steps of revision. As I mentioned in the beginning, it helps to see how different people have applied revision, and particularly for SP, which is a highly sought after and a bit of a contentious topic. And we'll leave you with this parting note. Manifesting an SP, while you may use revision, can actually help you to manifest an SP. It is really about your self-concept. And self-concept is something that I have not yet touched on in terms of SP, but I will do a future video. I will talk about how I used revision, self-concept, and my inner speech in terms of elevating and changing my marriage, changing how I was experiencing myself in terms of my marriage, what I believed, etc. So those are some things that I would really like you to actually understand. Sometimes people cannot get the results that they desire from revision. And it's not because revision is the issue. It is because the issues or the beliefs and their belief system is so deeply imprinted and ingrained in their subconscious that they must actually also make sure that they're working on self-concept and their inner speech and revising anything in their day that may be in conflict or contradiction to what they'd like to achieve. Thank you so much for being part of this channel. I love that there are so many new subscribers that come on a weekly and a daily basis. I produce this content so that you can apply these steps and manifest the life that you truly desire. I invite you to test the law and prove that it works, because it truly does. I'll see you in the next video.